Hey guys, it's Sarah. Welcome to my channel. I am autistic, ADHD, and have some other things that kind of go along with that, anxiety, um, etc. And I just made this channel to kind of have more advocates, help more advocates here in America, and spread more information about autism and neurodiversity, learning disabilities, etc. Um, Anyways, I don't know if you have watched any of my other videos. Sorry, I have my cat down here if you're wondering what I'm doing. This is Glitch. That's enough distraction of cute kitty for the day. And she'll probably help me with this video because like I still feel new and I need something soft to pet. But I was actually going to do a video this time that was talking about autism and empathy. I know that there's like so much information out there for those who go to look for it, and I watch like so many different advocates, mostly not in the United States. There's a couple here in Texas, but um, anyways, I'm trying to put out more information on other subjects that um, are gone into a little bit, but that way I could put information that's not already out there. But today I kind of just wanted to start off fresh. So I made this channel and I kind of like skipped into some random things because, ADHD also with being autistic. And like, I'm just going to like kind of rewind and talk about my story, how I found out I was autistic. And I've done podcast with my friend Carol Jean that kind of talked about some of these things, if you're interested in that. But I'm just going to kind of tell my story with my experience and kind of how I figured all of this out and sort of where that led me into being an autism advocate. um, anyways, so yeah, I think the first time that I really heard about autism or Asperger's or anything along those lines, which, I know they don't typically use that term anymore, but that's what I heard first was Asperger's. One of my best friends, she's on the spectrum, and she kind of told me about it, but the first time we met, like, we just were talking and walking around, and I don't even know, it was at a wedding, neither of us knew anyone. It just was like, we're best friends now. And I just went through like another sort of like crazy friend thing where I totally messed up some stuff, and like a lot of things were just not really known about as far as me being autistic. So meeting her, I just was kind of like, oh, this is nice, and wanted to. Whenever she told me about having Asperger's, I was like, I have no idea what that is. But I think like a lot of the stories of the other women that I've heard about being on the spectrum, when they heard that word, it was like, that's an interesting word. Like, you have Asperger's, or I don't know. For me, it was like I just wanted to know more about her in order to support her in the right way. Like, turns out people don't actually naturally do those things all the time. Um, but whenever I meet friends, like I wanted to be able to like know what that is so that I could know like, okay, like what bothers you or whatever. And I'm still kind of myself. So, I try, and sometimes I still just do things. Um, but that led me into like this deep dive of like research some more, research some more. What is this? What is this? And then I realized so many different things that I connected to with it. And it wasn't necessarily like the same things as what she sees herself as being autistic, but it was more about like me. because some of the stuff on there didn't maybe necessarily pertain to her as much, but it did to me. Of course, later, like a year and a half ago or whenever I found this out, maybe almost 2 years ago now. That's weird. Um, I I just went somewhere just then. Sorry, guys. um, hmm. Okay, I'm back. I was like, I lost my train of thought. I need to pause this before I just sit here blankly stare into the camera. Um, but yeah, so like I had to do a lot of research into it myself, and realizing that, of course, eventually, yes, all autistics are different, and I definitely have way more of the hyperactive ADHD part. She does not. Not saying, there's no ADD or, I mean, ADHD on her side, but like for me, it was just, it's pretty extreme. So that causes, I think, a little bit more anxiety in some ways, and then just like the inability to just be quiet sometimes. But I started to research into more of that, and then I started to think, after actually quitting researching for probably maybe another half a year or so, I just sort of quit looking into it because I was like, I don't know, I'm not sure, and I don't. I'm just now figuring out what this all means, and then I just had a lot of stuff going on in my life at that time, so I just didn't look into it more at that point. About a year later passed, and I looked more into it because it just kept, I don't know, it kept coming up. Then there was a lot of stuff going on with my kids, and so I was like, okay, like, obviously, time to get back into this. I need to figure out what's going on with me and why, number one, that I was having a lot of struggles sensory wise, especially with these guys. um, and what I could do or what tools I could have that would help me to be able to be a better mom. And I was a stay at home mom for like 5 years at that point, and I was just kind of like, something's got to change. I've got to figure out what to do that could help. And that just led me into another deep dive. So here we go again. you know, um, Back down into the drain of unknown about autism. And like, I ended up figuring out so many different things. And thinking back to my childhood, believe it or not, I was actually super quiet. I was so quiet, like in the third grade, I believe, which my mom always said I had a magic memory. I'm not boasting about it. I'm just saying I remember just everything. I remember everything. It's crazy. All the details, the smells, the things. Like, I can be right back into that situation. So I remember sitting there playing the quiet game. I was super good at it. And like multiple times they put me on the special ed bus because they would run out of seats on the big bus for all the kids, and they didn't want basically a bunch of kids that were jumping around crazy or like, that were going to pick on the other special ed kids and stuff like that. And I used to be so quiet that they picked me. And I thought that made me feel special. I actually thought it was cool, like, that I got to ride on that bus. And over time, I think just, you know, not being very accepting, being a female, not being super social, not being super talkative, like all those things, like definitely led me into masking. And I went to probably in all maybe 10 different schools, 3 different high schools. So for a little bit after I figured out that I'm not a complete idiot, because honestly, that's what I thought most of my life, I was frustrated that like none of the teachers picked any of this up, and I didn't even get my diagnosis for ADHD until I was a junior in high school, and I was pretty much like failing everything almost up until then, except for art and lunch and maybe history or geography or whatever. But anyways, like, yeah. But it just turned out that I just needed my own ways to learn, and to cope, and that I didn't need to mask so much, that it took away all my energy that I probably could have put into learning more. I feel like there's different ways that can go. You either mask a lot and you do a little bit better in the social area, or you don't mask so much, you do really, really, really good in school, but you're lacking somewhat in the social area. Like, you may not care as much as friends. You're considered the book person, or whatever, the girl with the book and just kind of by herself, whatever. And honestly, now that I'm at this point, I wish that would have been me, because I love reading books now, and like I wasted so much time masking and trying to like not get picked on and bullied anymore. So like I think the bullying and just, needing to, as a female on the spectrum, like trying to just find my place in every school that I went to. But that's a whole nother thing. We'll go into like my masking story, like that whole thing. Went into a little bit, but it's pretty important on my story, because it's probably why no one would have really even looked into it, or like I learned how to do different stems or picking at things, like stuff like that. But basically, with that, I dug super deep into my childhood. I started asking like all of my parents, how many ever, my mom, my stepdad, like just like what they remembered about me, like what, like me in school, which I remember constantly coming home, like crying, being bullied. I did my hair like in really weird styles. Like I had this written thing going on, except there was more ponytails. Like definitely when I was trying to be myself, I would dress like kind of odd or different or whatever. And a lot of times I'd get picked on. Or I thought, oh, since these people are my friends now, and I now fit in with this crowd, now I can dress myself. No, like that's not what you do. You don't get to do that. Then they just make fun of you after and kick you out of the group. Oopsie, Like still, even though I got most of it, I didn't get most of it. Um, no kidding, not today. We will have your show a different time. But so anyways, um, I do remember coming home, and there was times where I would come home, and even as a fourth grader, I remember just going to this school where it was definitely one of the rougher schools I go to or went to um, in elementary, and I got picked on probably the most at that school for a while, and bullied, and I would try to stand up for my friends and stuff like that. Um, But after that school is definitely probably when most of the masking started, because of being bullied and like just for trying to be myself, like doing my own style, doing my own hair. And my mom kind of remembers like me struggling with friends, like especially if it would have been more than a group of two, like then there's the three friends thing and all that kind of stuff, and that never worked out, because a lot of times I would make friends with a girl, and then she would end up and then I would make friends with another girl, and then I would introduce them thinking that was all gonna be all fine and dandy. And then, of course, they start hanging out all the time, and I probably had my issues or whatever, not understanding so much of how things are supposed to be, I guess. Um, like, I didn't get frustrated that they were hanging out. I more just got frustrated that they started leaving me out constantly, and like it was like I didn't exist all of a sudden. Um, yeah, and I'm not trying to like pity me story. I just felt like I fell into a pattern of that, and it probably made me a more angry person when it came to that kind of stuff. And I just never understood, honestly, either, like how friends worked or like how you did that. I just always do better with like one friend at a time, like one hanging out, not groups, not groups. Let's not do groups. Still trying to work that out at almost 30 with two kids. But that's kind of like, I feel like more of what my mom remembered is just like my struggle with friends and things and people and whatever. And then my stepdad actually had like a better, like at least not better answer, but like something that was like, ooh, that's nice, instead of like, oh, this was tough. His was that I marched to my own beat. I did my own thing, and I didn't care what anybody else thought. And I was like, so yeah, that's my definition of me as a female on the spectrum. I mean, and that's when I was being myself. So um, I'm not saying that autism is like, oh, that's my entire identity. But finding out why I was like that and why I couldn't understand helped me to work on and get tools in order to understand. So that's why I do take it on as an important part of my identity, um, but not the whole thing. Because, I've kind of had to acquire while masking these different things that I'm now trying to separate from who I actually am. And that definitely confuses your family or the people who thought you were a certain way or liked certain things or whatever, um, versus like that child that I actually was and who I am now, which actually matches up more with that than all the stuff in between. So eventually learning, more about, and focusing more about me and the spectrum and the autism versus the ADHD as much, because I kind of knew a little bit more about that and like some of the learning disabilities as far as when I struggled in school with those things. But the autism part for me, like, it helped me really truly become confident. I mean, people have seen me as confident, and I'm just like, well, I must have been masking good for those like 27, 8 years. Because no, um, I'm confident when I am weird and odd and funny and silly, and not just necessarily in a childish way. Like, I can go from being that to like this like silly old woman hanging out with my friend drinking tea and just like talking, um, not all about adventures. So it helped me to like actually come down to earth a little bit because like I was just floating around up there and understand who I am and who I can still be. It's not like, oh, well, I found all this out. It's some cool knowledge. It's some cool information. But now I'm just stuck as this. No, like you can still move up and on, like onward, infinity and beyond, and go somewhere from that. But for me, I was missing such an important part of who I am and who I was before things in the world changed me, that I was not going to go anywhere. I was probably not going to be the greatest parent either. Like, I needed to learn those things. I needed to know that I needed headphones. And that's not so that I can't hear them. It's just so I can tone it down. Like, I needed to know all of those things that go in my little magic hat, bag, whatever, in order to be successful and not end up in a worse place, because I needed tools. Um, like, I do have a lot of the motor skills issues, but I love messing with tiny little objects and stuff like that. Um, the career choices that I chose to do as an adult were nothing of what I wanted to do whenever I was younger, because I kind of did what everybody was telling me I would be good at. So now I've been able to make lists of things that I really wanted to do. And yes, I have to mark out and be more realistic in the choices of what I can do as a parent now, but it doesn't cancel me out. I'm not just like done, you know. This is all you're capable of. So while yes, the autism comes with the sensory issues and you know, just me having to wear headphones, me having to wear different colors of glasses so that the light doesn't bother me, me having to, um, you know, balance my energy, which I do have a video for that if you want to check that one out. And I do have to limit myself from different things. But guess what? If I didn't figure that out, wouldn't know how to have relationships still, wouldn't really even try to begin to understand what I'm doing wrong in a situation in order to have friends, when it comes to that part. So I could have masked all I wanted to. That's not really going to get me anywhere. I'm able to go to school again because now I realize, like, although I may not be a complete genius, I'm actually kind of smart. So, like, that's the confidence that I needed. Um, just to be real and authentic. Ironically, I just used to always hate when people were so fake. And this is probably one of the most real things that I'll say, but I was probably the fakest of them all. Because that's all I knew to be in order to function in this world. But I wasn't truly functioning. And that's why eventually, without finding this information out, probably would have fallen apart. Because I need extra things to be successful. And I could talk all day, but there's still times when I struggle to do so, or I struggle to get things out. When I went through this deep soul searching dive of just really having my mind blown all the time, and I still do with all the books that I read about, you know, uh, people on the spectrum and just like their stories. I would have never known that I would have made it to where I am today without those other advocates. So even though this may terrify me to like be on this screen, those people or maybe even once at my point, but they were still able to help me by putting the information out and being available to understand the differences in others and themselves. So this video is probably all over the place because that's how my brain is. But that is my story, and there's so much more, so much more. But this video is like 23 minutes, and I hope you make it to the end. I try to keep them short, but this one had so many details about my story, and hopefully I will be able to share with more people on personal and just things that I've researched, even if they don't pertain to me, about autism and neurodiversity. But thank you for listening, and have a good day.